Hello and welcome to Close Calls on the 42.e, brought to you in association with Air Sport. You know the scale of this stage. Every week we look ahead to the biggest sporting event of the weekend, and we're joined by the hottest pundits in the game. I've got two League of Ireland legends with me here. My own name is Gavan Casey. We're looking forward to the FAI Cup final this weekend. I'm joined by Stuart, Byrne. How are things, Stewie?
Good, Gavin. Yeah, good to be here.
And we're joined on the line as well on Skype by Cork City legend and author Neal Horgan. Neal, how are things?
Great, thanks. Lovely weather down here in Cork. As usual.
Always lovely down here.
I have to look over my shoulder there for those pundits you were talking about.
Well, I suppose there's only one place to start really this week. It's been an action-packed lead up to this FAI Cup final. I don't think necessarily either team have come out of it particularly well, and yet it's done wonders, I guess, to shed light on the final and promote it. Stuart, it starts in Soho Bar, where Neal and I would have seen over the years plenty of controversies unfold, but Mark McNulty's chant kind of kicked off a chain of events. Stephen Kenny has responded. He said it was like something out of the gutter, kind of describing it as classless. And then there's the Carl Shepherd thing brewing in the background as well. Like, this one is really, it's a spicy build-up.
It has, yeah. I mean, I suppose when you think about it, Stephen kind of had a choice here as to whether to bring it up or not, and he's chosen to bring it up. And I think that kind of sort of tells you where they are in terms of mentally going into this game. I think they're fired up for it. I think it's this season, in terms of their league form, has hurt them. The fact that they were obviously trying to achieve the 4 in a row, and they were scuppered by an excellent Cork team. So this is their chance, their opportunity to get one back on them. And I think he wants, as manager, he's going to utilise every tool he has, every resource he has to get his team fired up, and also to maybe sort of try and scupper the plans of the opposition. And you have to feel that that's exactly what he's done. Also, what it does is it takes the pressure off, his players in the whole build-up. So, you would think now that the press are trying to get some sort of reaction from McNulty or whatever the case may be, and it's the old Mourinho trick, isn't it? To kind of bring the pressure on me, just to take it off the players and to give them as much focus and preparation for the game as is possible.
Yeah, Neal, what do you make of it down there? Is there much talk of it on Lee's side?
Yeah, there's a little bit of talk about it. I think I agree with Stewie. I think Stephen Kenny has probably made the decision to use it in his favour. It actually reminds me, Stewie, of, do you remember a time when Alan Bennett said to you guys, you've no bottle or something like that?
Yeah, remember well.
I think that backfired on us that time anyway. But this isn't quite similar, or it's a bit different in that, I think Mark, in fairness, after the elation of victory, said something probably he shouldn't have. And I think Stephen Kenny has jumped on that really for his own benefit. And look, like you said, Gavin, it all adds to what's turning out to be an event that's heating up day by day. But there's a lot of talk about that down on Lee's side. But mainly people now, they're more interested in the game, I'll be honest with you, than anything going on between the manager and maybe Mark McNulty,
Yeah, big time. Like, we'll only spend a couple of more minutes on it. Like, you've played under Stephen Kenny, and you said to me coming in, you might have been a little bit surprised that he has taken his view on it like that. I know what you're saying. There's a logic to his decision to kind of, I suppose, highlight it and take the pressure and the attention off his players. But you were a little bit surprised that he didn't just turn a blind eye to it and get on with it.
Yeah, see, it's not his game. It's something that certain managers, this kind of thing comes natural to. And Neal, you would remember the times when you had the likes of Pat Dolan and Pat Fenlon and Roddy Collins in the league. They loved this stuff, because it was just natural to them. They knew how to use it, And even Damien Richardson, would throw one or two in as well. But Stephen, it's just something that doesn't come natural to him, and he hasn't gotten involved in this up until this season, actually. And I don't know how good your memory is, but we think back to even last April of this year. I was quite surprised that when Stephen came out and started to kind of have a go at the referees, saying that Dundalk weren't getting enough penalties, and it led to their worst run of form in 4 or 5 years. They had a terrible 6 or 7 week spell. They lost 3 or 4 games. That was it. End of story. So I think he may have learned a lesson from that. So that's why I was a little bit surprised he's come out with this now. But when you think about it, it's one game. It's a winner takes all type scenario. They've nothing really to lose by it, so why not use it?
Yeah, how do you reckon the Cork City players, Neal, will react to it, if at all? I mean, like, again, I suppose Kenny is putting the onus on his own players to sort of rise above it and respond to it on the pitch. How will City players perceive it, given that they're under a little bit of scrutiny? Like, there's been a lot of criticism of them, not just in terms of their end of league or their end of season form, but just their conduct, I suppose, in the last week or so.
Yeah, I think in fairness, I think their conduct overall has been very good. I know that that in I think it was in the Soho bar that night even, which I think was the night they were awarded the cup. A lot of the guys, I think pretty much all of them, including Mark, I don't think they were drinking, because they've learned the lessons from our mistakes back in 2005, where we won a league and then let it kind of. We'd only 2 weeks, which isn't much of an excuse, but we had 2 weeks before the cup final, which we would have won the double on. And I know that looking back, we all have kind of regrets about how we didn't really curtail it. But I think, to be honest with you, the players aren't going to be thinking about this at all, to be honest with you now. It's going to be all about are they in the team or not. And John has a lot of decisions to make, I think. Perhaps with the Shepherd thing coming into the picture a little bit, it'll be interesting to see what his first 11 is. And like I suppose Stephen Kenny, you can understand why he would do this. I agree with Stewie in that it's not really his form to do that. Apart from the penalties thing this year, I haven't seen him do that before. And it might be telling you that Stephen is feeling that he needs to bring something to the table here as well. So it's going to be a great game. I'm looking forward to it anyway. 3:30 on Sunday, and it'll be interesting to see, particularly what John Coughlin's first 11 will be.
Yeah, big time. Take us back to 2005, Neal. I mean, you mentioned there that you and some of your teammates from that time would have regrets about the way you went about things in the intervening 2 weeks between winning the league and the cup final. It sounds like you've maybe even spoken about it in the years since. Like, does the regret still linger, or is it just...
Yeah, to some extent. I remember my father saying, you don't understand how important a double is. I felt I kind of did. Or it might have been somebody other guys. I'm only joking. I think what happened actually was really it was a long, like we won. We have to win the final game of the season to win the league, so it was uncertain, much more uncertain, I would say, than this Cork City team this year. And there was a huge release around the city that I suppose we got swept away on for a week, and maybe a little bit longer than a week. But it is a regret, I suppose, looking back, that we didn't contain that situation better, because as you see from a Cork point of view, they haven't won the double since 1951, a Cork League of Ireland team. So you see how rare these moments are, and I suppose looking back, in an ideal situation, we would have maybe celebrated a night or two and then cut it, but that probably didn't happen at the time. And I suppose I wouldn't be alone in regretting that part of it. I wouldn't be blaming anyone in particular. I know Rico did his best to get us back training and get our mindset on it, but it didn't quite work out, and we had a draw to a team who were waiting for us in the cup final. I think it'll be different with this team, in fairness. I think they've had the league kind of won since the summer. I think Stewie would agree with me. We were saying that at that time. So the focus is very much on the cup final and not on last week's events or the week before at all. It's on the cup final and about players playing, pretty much for their career. John has another 2 years at Cork City. There may be players leaving, there may be players coming in. And in the end, it's about retaining the cup final, or the cup, which would be an amazing achievement on top of the league. So, that's what players will be thinking about. That's what the fans there'll be a huge army of fans from Cork City, particularly with the women's game as well. And they've made the cup final, which is fantastic from a club point of view, to have Cork senior men and senior women's in the FAI Cup final in the Viva. It's not something that was on the cards previously for obvious reasons, and now it is on the cards, and it's the right way that things should happen. That and I know they're playing, I think, at noon, and there'll be a big crowd in from that for Cork City. So, all going well from a Cork point of view, we might have 2 cups coming home, Yeah,
we'll see what happens. We'll get a couple of predictions from people watching at home. Dylan Loughnane says 1-1 Dundalk to win 3-2 on penalties. That's extremely specific from Dylan. Well done, Dylan. Billy Dorney, Cork City superfan, he says 2-1 Cork City. FFS. You can work out what that means. That abbreviation. Dundalk haven't beaten us in 7+ matches. I'm not sure what the plus part of that is. It might be like the last half hour of another game or the 8th game ago. There's another question here from Alan Bradshaw. Now, Neal, you've given your version of events briefly, but he says, what was that about Bennett saying there was no bottle? Did he say that about the Reds? Please tell the story.
Well, let Neal tell it.
Okay, go for it, Neal.
Yeah, so
he was urging Bennett to say it.
Yeah, I was not. It was Pat Fenlon was your manager. Stu, you were at the club at the time, I imagine, Shells, were you? Yeah, so I think Alan just let his guard down. We were chasing Shells for a long time, and you're a fantastic side. Like, in my opinion, probably the best side who's played in the league in living memory, and I would include Dundalk in that, right? In terms
I'll agree with that, Horgan.
Quality all around the pitch. Yeah. So, apart from the middle part, but anyway. But they had a fantastic team, and we've been chasing them under Pat Dolan and under Damien Richardson, and it just came to a head where I think Alan, just after the match live on TV, said, let's see their bottle now, or something like that. It wasn't that inflammatory or anything like that, but I know, having spoken with some of the Shells lads afterwards, a few years afterwards, and Pat Fenlon recently, that I think he used it in your favour, which, you know, it's something that I suppose a manager can use and can put up and say, look, that's what they're saying about us, lads. Well, let's respond to that. Was that?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no, that's you know, you couldn't have said it better. Like, you know, and it's kind of that siege mentality, isn't it? You know, it can work really well when you get it right. It can be counterproductive now when you get it wrong. But no, there's no doubt about it that you know, when you're constantly at the top, the other teams are, you never. There's one thing I always experienced throughout my career, especially my time at Shells, you just never got a bad game. Somebody was always trying to knock you down, like, you know, and week in, week out, and in a way that helps your mentality, because it means you have to be constantly on top of your game, because regardless of who comes to play, they could be second from bottom, they could be bottom, you know, they'll come and they'll put a performance in. Even what's coming to my head now is actually the Bows game in 2006, where I went off on a little bit of a rant after the game. But Bows that year had struggled all year. You know, hadn't you know, we were really poor. I think they were under Gareth Farley, and they finished mid-table, even less than that. And it still had some wonderful players. Still, Kevin Hunt was still playing for them, but they came to talk that night, and they were absolutely fired up. I couldn't believe it. Like, you know, now we were ready for it. Now we took us probably a little bit by surprise, but you know, that's just what you got. Like, you know, and it's the same for, you know, for Cork this year, and as it was for Dundalk. You just don't get easy games, do you?
Yeah, I would say what's a little different with this is that Stephen Kenny hasn't gone to the players and gone into the dressing room and said, lads, and showed their video, you know, amongst themselves. He's gone to the media with it. Yeah. And he's using it in the media, which is a different thing. And I think, in fairness to Mark, like, I really like Stephen Kenny, but I don't think when he was saying about Mark disrespecting all the players of Dundalk throughout the years, I mean, that was the furthest away from Mark's head. He was no more doing that than I am now in this conversation. I mean, Dundalk's a fantastic club. So I think Stephen Kenny's used it a different way. He's used it to spark a kind of debate and a lead up to the cup final. And more power to him, I suppose. You know what I mean? And it all adds up to what will be a spicy match on Sunday.
Yeah, big time. Let's try and figure out then who's actually going to take up the cup this weekend. Like, I mean, we'll chat about briefly like where the game will be won and lost. But like, Stu, you wrote in a recent column that City's title win was almost underwhelming the way they fell over the line. And if you look at like some of the stats, I think they scored, was it 8 league goals since Sean Maguire left in July, in 12 league games, something like that. Dundalk have 25 in the same period. Like, there's one team here looking like they're in serious form, or at least in better form than the other. Like, do you think that factors into it, or is it just that HA Cup final, anything can happen?
Well, when it comes to the cup final, anything can happen, and because it is that one-off game, and because it's in the Aviva, you know, that tends to level everything up, like, you know, and it's all about your game day mentality and how you perform on the day. But you cannot get away from the fact that when you look at the form guide, and if you're a stats man, you know, you'd be quite interested that when you look at the last 10 league games, if you were to take the last 10 league games and look at how Dundalk performed and how Cork performed, like, Dundalk would be top, Cork would be even less, you know. Now, that all goes at the door, to be quite honest, when it comes to a cup final, because really, in reality, it is it's a one-off, and of course it helps the fact that Dundalk have been here for the last few years, Cork have been there for the last few years. They know each other inside out. So effectively, I would imagine Cork would be working on a game plan to kind of try and nullify Dundalk and the threat, and then maybe something similar to last year, try and nick one the way they did, because obviously since they've lost Sean Maguire, they've had to adapt.
Yep.
You know, they've had to adapt their game. They've had to play slightly different. Carroll's gone up front, hasn't been banging in the goals, however, but has been performing. He's been outstanding for them as well, you know. And of course, Dundalk have a serious threat. Funnily enough, the more I think about it, I'm actually starting to focus in on the goalkeepers.
Right.
And how effective either of those two guys are going to be, because they are the best two in the country. In my opinion, Mark is the best goalkeeper in the country and has been for the last couple of years. But obviously, the events of this week just putting a little bit of pressure on him.
Every corner,
I'm sure he's well able to handle it. You know,
ball.
he's no spring chicken anymore. He's an experienced guy, and maybe he's the kind of guy that loves that or not. But it could, you know, if it's as tight as it has been between these two sides, we could be looking at another penalty scenario. So it could come down to the two guys. The one thing I will say about Dundalk, in a negative sense, is that there definitely seems to be a chink in their armour this year. Now, it was more evident earlier in the season. Then they were very good mid-season, but it kind of reared its head again. I felt towards the end of the season. I thought in the game in Turner's Cross, the game that finished, it was 1-1, wasn't it? Yeah, I didn't think they were fantastic, especially in the second half. And then, of course, they were turned over by Bows at home recently. I was up at Finn Harps to see them in the game up there. Ultimately, they won the game. It was an awful pitch. Finn Harps are very poor, but there were certain things in the game which would cause you for concern, and that would be some of the defensive lapses between Brian Garton and Rogers. On a couple of occasions, both of them sort of got the communication wrong between each other, and it could have led to goals. And what that tells you is they're not that mean machine that they once were. That there's a chink there, and that's what I think probably Cork could play on.
I'd agree with you, Stewie, there. I think Boyle's loss is probably, Darren Horgan is obviously a fantastic player, but Boyle's loss at the back for them, it reminds me of actually the same guy, Alan Bennett, when he left us in 2006. We found it very hard to bring anyone. Now, they have very good replacements, don't get me wrong, but it's not just about the player himself, it's about the relationship with his back four that has been built up over, you know, maybe 3 or 4 years, and that's not something you can fix overnight. And they've struggled a bit with that. I would say as well, Stewie, that the game in Turner's Cross this year was a good measure of where the clubs were, or where the teams were, now that Sean Maguire has left. And I think it's close. I know the form, as you're saying, Gavin, would predict, you know, that maybe that Dundalk are on a better place than Cork. But when they came down to Turner's Cross and we watched the game, I'd agree with Stewie. I was actually surprised that Dundalk weren't more in control, because they weren't in control of that game at all.
They were very poor, actually. Like City were the dominant team in the game.
I think Cork were the dominant team in that game. Obviously, they were at home, so I think it's going to be a tight game. It's been tight over the last few years. I'd love to see a few goals early on, because I know we've seen that in a while. But I do think it's interesting. The Boyle factor for Dundalk, and you know they've you know, Hoare and Vemeland are very good players, but it's not about those players. It's actually about the back four, which had remained changed as far as I could see for some time. You know, and I think that's been a factor for them, which it may prove decisive or not on Sunday.
Yeah, I suppose, like, if you were to look as recently as maybe 2 years ago, 18 months ago, Dundalk almost had this hoodoo over Cork City, like where Cork couldn't get over the line against Dundalk. And now, as Billy Dorney points out, cheers Billy, like, it's been 7+ games where the shoe's on the other foot now. And like, does that factor into it at all? Like, that mentally you're sort of aware that so many times recently you just can't get past this team?
Oh, I think it does. Yeah, I think it's not by mistake that Cork went and won the league this year. You know, I think winning the cup final last year just was a huge monkey off their back, and it said, they were able to say to each other, now, do you know what, we can win now, we can go and win things now. And it's not by mistake, is it, Neal, that they went and absolutely ran rampant in the league, because they had that confidence. They said, hang on a second, these aren't unbeatable, we can do this, and then look what it's led to. So the
Cork City got a huge boost from the cup final last year, must be said, and just felt like, let's kick on from here, and they did. At the start of the season, they were unbelievable. So I think, looking into next season too, that's probably in the back of the manager's minds, is that we want to send out a signal for next year. I know that sounds kind of, in a way, limiting the value of the cup, and I don't mean to, because obviously the winning the FA Cup is probably the highlight of most players' careers. But in terms of next year and the league season, with Cork City in the Champions League and Dundalk in the Europa League, this might be the thing that if Dundalk win it, does it put them back in control or in the top position like it did to Cork last year? So it's all to be seen.
Yeah, well, boys, we'll finish on predictions, I guess. Stuart, we might start with yourself. How do you see it going?
I think if Cork get a game plan right and they bring to the table what they did in Turner's Cross, I think it could be very, very tight. I just see more goals in the Dundalk team. I mean from all around the pitch. And I think it could be 2-1 to Dundalk.
Well, at least
in 90 minutes.
At least we'll see a few goals anyway. Neal,
don't be too disappointed. Going to go over Cork.
That made it easy for me to do that.
I was actually going to go to some of the commentators before we went to yourself, Neal. Leave the suspense build. Joe Kennedy says 1-0 to City, and Billy Dorney to be seen running onto the pitch at the end with nothing other than his Cork City FC scarf on. Please God, don't let that happen. Colin Mullen, says 2-0 to the Lily Whites. Tony O'Connor 2-2 all day long. Tony extremely confident that the game will be going to extra time. Neal, over to yourself, the final word.
Yeah, I'd love to see loads of goals and that, but I don't see it happening. I'd see it probably, it could be a 0-0 draw into extra time there.
Jesus, Neal.
And Cork City have only played, I know, I'm going to get a plug in here. Cork City have only played extra time against one team this year. Do you know, guys?
Ooh. Rovers, no?
There's something. Wilton United is the answer. And I was playing for Wilton United in Munster Senior Cup final this year. So I see Cork City, like they did that day, winning extra time after extra time. That's probably 3-2. All the goals to come in extra time.
We can all agree that football will be the winner.
Football will be the real winner this weekend. Lads, thanks a million. Thanks a million, Neal. Thanks a million. We'll speak to you soon. Enjoy the weekend.
See you, Horgan.
Thanks a million to you guys at home as well. Cheers for watching. Cheers for your comments, particularly to Billy Dorney and Joe for that grim prediction regarding Billy. Hope you enjoyed the game over the weekend. Thanks a million to Air Sport as per usual. We will be back next week looking ahead to Ireland's playoff against Denmark. Until then, take care.